Welcome to the 10th round of the Blitz tournament. Now we are playing a very tricky kid who already showed some dominance in this tournament. He started with d4, knight f6, c4, e6, and he went for the Catalan variation. I respond with d5, and after bishop g2, I picked a slight odd variation knight c6, which is recommended recently by Grandmaster Daniel Darda. Knight f3, and after bishop d6, the plan is to go castles and later on take and go for e5. Castles, he played a3, and now just take on c4. After queen c2, we are not in time now to push. I mean, we are, but there is even some better option, because in this specific line here, since they didn't attack with a knight on d2, this pawn from c4, we have now options to go knight a5 to protect this pawn and also to go b5. That's the lines that black can consider here for sure. I went for b5 directly, and now maybe you think, alright, what's happening after knight e5? Seems like there is a pin. But actually knight takes d4, queen has to move somewhere, and then the knight falls on e5. But then rook is hanging, on the other side there is c6 and bishop is trapped. And even though if bishop is not trapped, this position is much better for black since he has two pawns and piece for the rook and also activity. So b5, very tricky move, rook d1, and already black is better, it's -1, so it took only 8 moves in this game for black to get the advantage. That's why this variation of knight c6 is really tricky. So at that point I just need to relieve from this spin. I'm aware that on bishop b7 there is knight e5, and that could be problematic now since the rook is on the d line. So I'm thinking how to solve that problem. I was thinking about bishop d7, but I figure out that bishop b7 is solving all problems with this spin, because after knight e5 we have one move that is coming to my mind, and I will autopilot that one once my opponent played it, and that's the move queen e8. Now black is totally safe. We also have some ideas to go rook b8 and then, just take the knight on e5. If he trade everything on c6, that's totally fine for us, because trading leads to good position for black, simplifying since we are pawn up. He played e3, trying to consolidate, but this increased the advantage for black because now we can consolidate our defense. Rook b8, now we are ready for take on e5 since our bishop is not anymore hanging on b7. At that point, the only counterplay for white is b3, but that's something he should play earlier. He took on c6, took back with bishop, we traded, so now there is no more Catalan bishop, and then he played b3. But b3 is now too late, because he's not threatening to win the pawn. We are protecting this pawn enough, but of course, black would like to capture on b3 to not get double pawns again. I played queen f3, that's a really amazing move, because my idea is to go knight e4 and then to focus on this pawn here. Now he can take on c4, which he actually did in the game, and now it's -3. I should play knight e4 followed by knight takes f2, and queen won't get distracted of not protecting the rook on d1. Instead, he took back, he went knight e2, and now the game got equal according to engine, but it's still very tricky practically for white, because he can't move the knight because queen is hanging. He can't move the rook on the right spot. On the other side, developing the bishop is hard. He played rook a2, planning to move the knight, but now there is very nice resource for black here, because queen is still in connection with rook, which is hanging on d1, and black can here play very nice move c3. That's amazing move, because queen cannot capture, rook is hanging, and needs to move the knight from d2. Now the most logical move is something like knight f1, get into defense back, but it's passive move. Better one is to go knight e4, which really forces the trade. I need to take the queen, they take back, and then they ruin the structure. He went knight f1, which allows me again to free up my queen from e2 square. Now playing queen f3 would be enough, but I didn't like the move queen e2, offering the trade of queens again. So that's the reason why I played queen c4, getting around my pawn. I'm aware that, for example, the move such a bishop d2 doesn't do much, since I'll have something like knight e4. Queen still cannot take because rook here is hanging. But he does have this knight e2 back move, and now I went queen e2, he went knight f1, and I went queen to f3. So I kinda trick him because he thought we're gonna repeat the position, but now you see how he burns the time. That's really good psychological trick. I repeat 2 times and then just go for the move that I already planned before. You see how much time he spent, almost 20 seconds for the next move. He went queen e2, but queen e2 he would play much faster earlier. That's something is very true as a fact in blitz games. Now, of course, trading the queens is fine for black in this case because puts the rook on e2, now allows rook b1. And at this point, the bishop is pinned and rook has problems. Also, if rook e1, there is some ideas such as c2 followed by bishop takes a3 if they go rook d2. Rook c2 is a logical move, but that loses the pawn on a3. Also, there is some knight e5, knight e4 moves. He played rook c2, which is a great offensive move because he's threatening to win this pawn. And I don't have time for knight e4 now because there is f3, or on knight e5 there is d5, unfortunately for black. Otherwise, this would be great defense over the pawn on c3, and black will win the game sooner or later. But now the pawn on a3 is hanging, and I don't know why it took me so much time to take that pawn, because I was thinking where to drop my bishop most probably and to not lose the momentum. I'm pawn up, but it's still tricky. He went knight e2. I kept my rook on the first rank to maintain the pin on the bishop. He played knight b3. I went rook b1. He went knight e2, and now I still apply this idea because I'm having more time on clock. Rook b7. It's adding the time for white, but on the other side it's confusing him in ideas. So e4, bishop b4, and he played rook e3. My point was to take the knight if the pawn on e4 is not protected. Played rook d8, knight c4. And now it's getting more intense. c5. I allowed d5, which I completely forgot. I mean, I didn't forgot, but I didn't take it so much serious. Underestimate that move completely. I took, he takes. And now it's a little bit tricky, you know, this pawn becomes passer, and there is bishop, knight, beautiful coordination. I played h6, d6, and I went a5, so trying to expand my pawns on the queen side. According to engine, this is equal, but everything can happen. Bishop b2 targets the knight on f6. Now going knight e7 allows some rook e7, so I went knight e8, putting the pressure on this pawn. But now there is very strong move d7, and if I come back, there is bishop takes followed by rook e8, which is game over. But he played bishop to e5, which is definitely wrong move because it's blocking the line. I went f6, he went back, king f7. So now this gives my king angle to come to the game and also to support pressure on d6. He went king g2, and I just want to play logical moves. Rook d7, putting the pressure on this pawn. He spent so much time here and he defend. I played h5, h4, g6, king f3, knight g7. So now we start blitzing out. He went knight b6, rook b7, knight e5, knight e6. He took on f6, but now there is a problem with this move, and c4 is actually a winning move because when the rook moves there is c3, and now double attack, bishop c1, king takes f6. He did his check, knight takes, pawn takes, and after king e6, rook e5, rook takes d6, and that's game over after hiding the king behind the rook. So you see, it takes only one mistake to lose the game. So he also had some chances to win after all. I didn't convert the best way, but you know, it's blitz. I'm explaining him what he could do better. And that's for this game. I'll see you in the next one. Aha, pa ne, ja nisam ni vidio kad sam gurno G6, rekao da odigram samo neki potez, da priteči vremena nešto na mesto.
Da, imao sam to.
Ali onog tamo C2 ne vali jer imam to B5 i sad ako igraš konje 5, konj D4, pa meriš damu, uzem žrtven kvalitet i ona pozicija, znaš.
Mogu možda konj D4.
A3 ima, a poenta A3 je valjda da nemam konj B4.
Da?
Ili ne, izvini, na konj D2, da, konj D2 se igra i sad ja igram konja 5, to je kao neka varijanta.
Šta igra poslije?
Jer dama C2 ne preti ništa, imam B5. A ako igraš konj D2, ja igram B5, onda imaš šah 4.
Da.
Da.